Medical disclaimer. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. Always consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health regimen, including starting new therapies, supplements, or treatments. While we discuss cutting-edge research and advancements in cellular medicine, individual health needs vary and professional guidance is essential. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that neither Dr. Seeds nor the podcast team is providing personalized medical recommendations.
On today's episode of Redox Revolution, we're going to revolutionize the way you look at Alzheimer's disease. Welcome to another episode of Redox Revolution, and yes, I am here with the infamous Matt and Maddie.
I don't know what makes me infamous. I think me and the audience would both agree that the less I talk and the more you dive down your rabbit holes, the better. So,
but we need you to chime in to get them back on track.
I'm just excited to be here with both of you and to be able to avoid. I get better at avoiding your hidden tactics and how you guys like to just tear at me where you can't do that. Like,
well, you know what? Fine. You know what? Let's just address the elephant in the room then. Why is your shirt doing that?
I don't know. I got back from skiing. I've going through that body partitioning phase of, improving more lean mass. I don't know. It's embarrassing, but let's go.
All right.
You should relax, though.
Today's topic is actually a little bit of a heavy one.
Whoa.
So kind of a little bit of a
heavy
gradual
emotionally
lean in.
Or just heavy?
Just a heavy topic. So an estimate of about 7.2 million Americans age 65 and older are living with Alzheimer's dementia. That translates to about 1 in 9, about 11% of people over 65, with nearly 2/3 of those affected being women. So for years, scientists and clearly research dollars, they've focused on things like, I'm going to mispronounce this, tau tangles.
I think you pronounced that pretty right.
All right, cool. And plaque buildup as the cause of Alzheimer's. So continuing the Alzheimer's research discussion and where we are currently is the topic of today. So how has that view changed? Where has all of that research gone and where's the research pointed currently?
I feel like it's more universal now. They're not just singling out women as much as they used to, but also I feel like what you've emphasized is how they're really showing that before you even start developing symptoms, that neurocognitive disease process can be starting like 10 years in advance of that.
That's really interesting you bring up they're not just focusing on women, because that seems like the inverse of something we've discussed before, which is a lot of protocols are built around men and women tend to get ignored. So are you implying that it's kind of the opposite here, especially with 2/3 of it being women? Most of the research has been on women?
I feel like this is just one of the topics that I don't hear as much focus on women. And it might just be what I'm reading or listening to.
I'm just enjoying listening to this conversation going back and forth here right now.
Well, as great as Maddie is, and great as you or Maddie might think I am, no one came here to listen to us. So Dr. Seeds, why don't you chime in on the conversation?
Gosh, well, with what Maddie was saying, it took me down, I went down 3 rabbit holes immediately, and I forgot the whole...
Wait, while he's remembering, there's times on consultations where the patient's there to definitely talk to him, not to talk to Grace, Jake, or myself, and he's just sitting there, and we chime in, but then he just keeps sitting there, and we're like, I'll text him and say, speak.
It's because I'm thinking...
you get lost in the thought.
Lost in the sauce.
Lost in the sauce.
The sauce. The sauce?
The thought sauce.
Well, okay. Here is, I continue when we go into these themes of anything we're discussing, I try to always emphasize why cellular medicine's the future of thinking and why it's so pivotal in how we revisit disease. So how this is an example of this is Alzheimer's. Let's talk about it's related to dementia, cognitive dysfunction, loss of what people see as memory and decision making, and they see a decline in mental status. And there are different degrees, but the focus has always kind of been on the neuron. It's like it's a one phase disease. It's neuronal injury with plaque buildup. You just talked about amyloid beta and tau plaque. That's kind of been in this place for the last, 30 years or so of this focus. And what I'm going to tell you is, and what I think is absolutely undeniably true, is that we could look at Alzheimer, at that process of calling Alzheimer's a phenotype, meaning, okay, this is the end process. It's a phenotype, and there's many upstream cellular failures or inefficiencies that lead to Alzheimer's. It's not this plaque, amyloid beta. It's not tau protein. It goes much farther into being able to actually look at this, again, as a phenotype. That means it's correctable, but that there are many triggers that push all together into this process. And that's why this is such a difficult disease to understand, because it does happen over 10, 20 years. And what I believe is the critical thinking here is understanding that there's an energy failure, there's a mitochondrial influence, there's an immune influence, just as we've talked about before, there's a vascular influence.
So I have 5 categories right here, and you're naming some of them. I think we should go through them one by one, but let's start with just listing out the 5.
I haven't even finished my...
Oh, yeah. No, you're naming them, and I just want to make sure we're building...
You think we're going to get through 5 as he adds detail to it?
I have faith. So if we're talking about all the causal factors, just based on things that you've said in the past, the 5 that we kind of have it broken down into is that first would be this amyloid accumulation and tau pathology, which you've kind of touched on.
Yeah.
And this is in no particular order. Number 2 being the microglial dysfunction and neuroinflammation.
Yeah.
Number 3 being mitochondrial dysfunction, aka your energy crisis.
AKA powerhouse of the cell.
Number 4.
3 out of 3.
Number 4, vascular disorder.
4 out of 4.
And number 5, metabolic dysfunction, i.e. insulin resistance, quote unquote, type 3 diabetes.
Yeah.
So, real quick, just to tie up the loop on this first one.
What do you want me to do with all that? Yeah.
The amyloid accumulation and tau pathology. How does that factor into it? And then we'll keep moving along the chain here.
Well, so
I know, I'm trying. Yeah.
So that's a trigger. So we were focused on neuronal death, and we were focused on, hey, it's this plaque formation, and hey, we're going to make these antibodies that are going to go in and eat up this plaque and take it out, and we're going to correct everything for everybody. Yep. And guess what?
We didn't.
We didn't. And because we realized that it's an influencer on the neuron. And I'll go into a little more detail on that because I think we need to do that if you'll let me. it's an influence, and that means there have to be, if that doesn't take care of the problem, then there have to be higher mechanisms that are influencing this problem with plaque and other issues. So let's look at that. Let's break that down and say, okay, well, is there something? Is amyloid plaque? Is there a reason that it builds up, number one? And are there different types of amyloid plaque?
I bet yes and yes.
The answer is yes and yes. It's related to, so think of this as, I look at amyloid plaque and tau plaque as these are this is a proteostasis issue where we're losing the ability to maintain proteins and proper folding of proteins. And amyloid is no different. Amyloid is in it's in the mitochondria where you have these amyloid precursor proteins, these APPs that start out that have to be cleaved.
And for the audience, cleaved.
You have to cut them into appropriate length amyloid segments, and so there are these secretases that do that cut them, that are like scissors, and typically in healthy amyloid, in not inappropriate amyloid, it's an alpha secretase that does that. Well, in this disrupted amyloid beta type of segments, it's a beta secretase and a gamma secretase. And the question is, well, then what influences that? Well, it's oxidative stress. It's an energy problem that happens in the mitochondria of losing efficiencies in the mitochondria, as we've always talked about, in this oxidative phosphorylation that produces ATP and NAD. There's a disruption, and there's this oxidative stress, and that oxidative stress then influences the secretases that go wrong, and then you have this inappropriate amount of amyloid that builds up, and it's amyloid that can't be removed. So when you have oxidative stresses in the mitochondria, they also influence something called autophagy in the cell. And autophagy is about cleaning up debris, cleaning up bad players, and then letting the cell repurpose itself to still do its job.
It's like a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah. And so you lose that autophagy of cleaning up, doing its own job. You lose also the efficiencies of what's called the proteasome, which is ubiquitin proteasome. It's how we remove proteins. Like you can clean them up and still salvage some amino acids, or you can totally remove a protein, and that's called ubiquination. It's
on this topic, I promise.
Jesus Christ, I was on a roll.
Ubiquination. But since this is all happening in the mitochondria and you lose autophagy, are you losing mitophagy as well?
In the cell, yeah. Okay, so that's another. So mitophagy is another. There's autophagy, cleaning inside the cell, and then there's mitophagy, removing bad mitochondria or other things that we can do with that are more complex, but removing mitochondria that are bad players, or removing the inefficient mitochondria. So that's mitophagy. But that's influenced by this also. You have autophagy, mitophagy that are disrupted. So you lose this control of maintaining the environment that's appropriate. And this is in the neuron. So the mitochondria are in the neuron, and this is happening in the neuron. So the neuron then loses its calcium metabolism, goes through apoptosis, meaning it blows up, or it's a non-immune destruction. So that's what can happen from amyloid beta in the neuron. Well, then tau is another type. It's a microtubular protein that is very important in the axons, where axons are what are between neurons that are transmitting the messaging. And long story short, mitochondria travel in these axons. They travel because energy, that's a high energy state. You need mitochondria. Well, if this particular type of tubulin protein, which is tau, what happens with oxidative stress is we lose the ability to control. Let me say this. I'm sorry. I know I'm getting deep in this, but this is a hyperphosphatation process. Where there's too much phosphorylation, and so this tau is phosphorylated, and then it misfolds. It becomes tangled in the axons. So you lose this energy that's being transported, you lose connectivity, and that's the early decline of how your brain is working. It's losing, you lose connectivity before you lose the neuron. So there's this tau influence, there's that amyloid beta influence, and this is just loss of proteostasis, which is all related to an energy crisis from the mitochondria that has influenced all. I've just gone through how that's influenced because the increase in hyperphosphorylation occurs with oxidative stress. So that's a small component of.
Of course, and when I ask you each of these 5, obviously they're going to dive into each other. It makes a circle. It's not 5 different lines, but I like this approach of us taking them on one by one, and then they continue to cross-weave into each other. So you touched on...
You didn't let me finish, but okay.
Wait, since he can I ask one quick question since you interrupted him first?
Yeah.
When the proteins when they get tangled, is it just a slower process, or is it just like completely stopped the signal?
It's a buildup. So it's a slow process. This is why this can be this low inflammatory oxidative stress that happens over years, 10, 20 years. This is one component of an energy crisis that affects the neuron and the axon. We're going to enter into other areas here in a second that are also having an influence in the brain. Think of all of these as triggers that are all coming together to... It's why there's no one super drug where everybody thinks there's one thing you can take and you're going to make the brain better. It's like not going to happen. You need to understand these processes because that's what we do in cellular medicine. We go after all these individual areas. So that's one area, is this loss of proteostasis, secondary to, we call it bioenergetics or energetics. Energetics is about the cells, a capability of what happens with energy and how it produces energy, how it regulates it, and how it distributes that in order for the cell to repair itself, control membrane stability, and signaling.
And
signaling.
It affects energy too, right?
Well, that's energy.
Oh, okay.
That's the beginning.
Right.
That's what I said.
All right, we started from starting point number 1.
Uh-huh.
Now let's do this all over again.
Okay.
And start from starting point number 2.
Yeah.
Microglial dysfunction and neuroinflammation. You started to touch a ton on it, but let's just start from there this time.
Okay, so we're kind of phasing this now into immune problems, which are microglial cells. And also, we could consider astrocytes as other glial cells, but in particular, the microglial cell is an immune cell that now can change. Where the microglial cell's job is kind of like what we talked about autophagy in the brain. It's there to clean up debris. It prunes these synapses, those axons, and those. It's there in the brain to clean up debris, let things keep remodeling as far as synapses. It's pruning, right? It's like pruning with.
So it's a good player.
Yeah, and phagocytosis, just removing debris, and and keeping the environment correct. Well, all of a sudden, the immune activation part, it changes into going from a structural control that is necessary to control the environment for that neuron to do its best job, and the astrocyte, it now turns into this inflammatory producing cell that makes cytokines and chemokines, these inflammatory mediators that lead to oxidative stress in the neuron, oxidative stress in the astrocyte, because real quickly, the astrocyte helps the neuron with energy, and we won't get into that, but the astrocyte's very important for making up and using, converting lactate into glucose for the neuron. It's a secondary mechanism of producing energy for the neuron. So overall, what happens is with this immune activation now, we've introduced another component of how the neuron now is exposed to more oxidative stress, which is bad. And so the microglial cell's importance is now it's switched into this inflammatory immune cell that increases oxidative stress in the neuron, also in the astrocyte, and this is another disruption now of another stressor on the neuron that leads to loss of resilience, of the ability of the neuron to handle stress, fragility again, okay? But there's a component also that we have to understand is actually the mitochondria in that microglial cell. It changes its metabolism and into more of a glycolytic state.
Because that's easier, right?
Not an oxidative phosphorylation state that leads to inflammatory changes in the microglial cell. So again, energy, bioenergetics, mitochondria are playing a role here in the immune
This is
process.
perfect. Don't keep rolling, because number 3 was mitochondrial dysfunction in the energy crisis. So keep on going with the
Led right into
mitochondria.
that.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I like this flow.
Ooh, my question fits here.
It's helping. Can I
So
answer?
the mitochondria switches to the glycolytic because that's easier, right? Like path of least resistance.
In a way, yes, because it makes ATP fast.
Okay.
It's kind of turned into an mTOR state, where it needs fast energy, and that's kind of what happens. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. And she just blew. What did you ask me? Oh, mitochondria.
You got into it.
So
We're starting from driveway number 3. Yeah.
so the mitochondria. Mitochondrial stress here is this, I think, is the elephant in the room, that
I was going to say the same thing.
Schmieden,
Schmieden.
that this, and nobody will get that, but this is so the mitochondrial goes through inefficiency of where it needs to be. Remember, we talked about mitochondria need to be flexible in handling energy substrates, meaning glucose, amino acids, and fatty acids. So when mitochondria loses its efficiency to manage that, it becomes more, it creates, when we lose fat oxidation, we lose the ability to control oxidative stress. So we lose redox in the cell. So this is all where redox comes into play. Redox disruption is what's occurring, and that leads to poor signaling, because remember, mitochondria signal, and they have incredible signaling properties that influence immune cells, influence other cells in the other organelles in the in the cell itself. So it's mitochondrial inefficiency then that leads to this mismatch of energy, ATP and NAD, that can then change this game. As if redox is then influenced and abnormal, that's where you get into this loss of these nuclear cofactors like NADPH, which is very important in keeping oxidation under control, but just as important in producing neurotransmitters. Your dopamine, your serotonin, your phenylalanine, your GABA, everything, because your tyrosine hydroxylases, your phenylalanine hydroxylases, your tryptophan hydroxylases, those are all, they need NADPH from the mitochondria to do that. So here you have all of a sudden introduced this molecular mechanism now to understand better, and you also lose nitric oxide, which is very important, and that'll be something we'll get into in the vascular part. But these are essential for what? The neurotransmitters, the vascular issue we'll talk about in a second. So here's another part of the brain, because of redox, because of loss of mitochondrial inefficiency, again, energy, and it has an overall effect. And remember, mitochondria are in every cell here.
They're the powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah, so it's fascinating, right? When you start to think about this, in how there's further upstream players, and it's so, I don't know if I can say this. I've had a lot of criticism outside from very, very well respected players in the field of cognitive dysfunction, Alzheimer's, and brain disease, through neurologists who've questioned, hey, Bill, you're missing it. It's this, and it's the immune system. It's vascular. It's like, well, of course it is, but don't you want to know why those things go wrong?
Yeah, you're not denying that it's not those things.
Never. Again, this is the power of understanding molecular pathways and mechanisms of how you can go back and relate it to the bioenergic
driveway number 4.
The bioenergics that lead to redox imbalance, that lead to immune dysregulation, that then lead to vascular compromise, that
Love
then
a good
lead
bridge.
then
Love a good bridge.
then lead to proteostasis, loss of proteostasis. So there you go. I just connected it all
But
with.
let's back up to vascular, back into the driveway.
Approaching it now from number 4. I love it. That one came to a great head. Now let's approach it from the 4th pathway, this vascular disorder.
Well, I mean, so this is where we start talking about, you get into, so this is where vascular poor perfusion to the brain is also a contributor to this metabolic or to dementia. And you can back up into that by saying, okay, well, what typically leads, what's the most common problem that involves vascular to the brain? It's high blood pressure, and from a 30,000 foot view. But what's involved with the potential of that is that it can lead to, even though it's high pressure, it can lead to hypoperfusion of the brain, because it can damage this high pressure can have an effect on damaging the endothelial cells of the small vessels, and you get small vessel disease. You get endothelial disruption that leads to inflammatory changes now in this vascular perfusion, and again that is related to mitochondrial issues within the endothelial cells themselves. And it all has to do with one of the things, like I said, nitric oxide production, loss of vasodilatation. But what's even more significant is this is where you start getting breakdown of the blood-brain barrier. And so that's where more immune issues can be a problem. Toxins, lipopolysaccharides, things from the gut we were talking about that can get to the brain. A lot of things start changing. And you also get this, you get into problems with what we call lymphatic drainage.
That's when all the toxins drain from your brain.
Correct. That's when all the, we call them, people call them toxins, but they're metabolites and things that have to be removed. And so lymphatic drainage is affected. So this is big, and this has everything to do now with, imagine with that aspect having an influence. Do you think that increases oxidative stress on the neurons and the glial cells and could lead to more immune activation? Absolutely. And lead to bioenergic issues also. So can that feed that process? Yes. So here's another area that overall mitochondrial or energy deficiencies or energy crises can be a significant component. And I think this is where, I think from the vascular standpoint, because we understand so much about high blood pressure and how that can influence what we would call early or mild cognitive impairment, you know, you have, this may bring me into an area to just discuss real quickly. With neurodegenerative disease, you have a finite time of where you can really make some changes in that phenotype I talked about. You know, this is one of those things that influences the phenotype. It's high blood pressure. It's why we get on this early, because over time it's one of those factors that leads to the mild cognitive impairment. And we know, so when we've talked in the past about studies that validate treatment and so forth, we know that if we treat high blood pressure, we can mitigate to some degree or even improve mild cognitive impairment if we catch it early on with this blood pressure issue. So it's why everybody should pay attention to that, because that actually leads to something over time. And it's these time things that, because the brain is incredible and can have all these different triggers going wrong, it can still function. And it's how the combination of all these things over time lead to that demise. When you see somebody that really has loss of cognitive function, it's why it's much harder to reverse that, because you've got all these triggers that are in play of what I've just gone through. So you got a lot that you have to fix. Yeah. But if it's early on, like something that can be easily identified as not a biomarker but blood pressure, that's pretty cool. I mean, you can get on that quickly. And so that has a big impact from the vascular side.
All right. Path number 5, unless you had a quick question.
I did have a quick question.
Oh, my God.
So, like, just
What's
how blood
happened?
pressure what about diabetes?
Oh, okay. So pathway number 5, metabolic dysfunction, i.e. insulin resistance, type 3 diabetes.
Oh, I hate when people say this, type 3 diabetes.
That's why I just said diabetes, made it general.
Hey, got to bring it in from any angle that anyone's ever heard, but yeah.
Well, this is metabolism now.
Yep.
So you've hit all the things I said.
Mm-hmm. Just putting it in a structure so that we can easily follow it and knock them down one by one.
Keep you on track.
Even though they all overlap, and it's not like these things are siloed, but now let's approach it from this side.
The last driveway.
You must go to my masterminds.
I must run your masterminds.
Doesn't necessarily mean you listen to my masterminds, but okay. So metabolism, so this is where metabolism is this other trigger or influencer of potential energy crisis, let's say. I think I like maybe the
That sounds nicer than
maybe the-
Alzheimer's or dementia.
well, yeah, maybe my approach might be better with this particular neurologist if I said energy crisis as opposed to mitochondria. I don't know, but the so here's where metabolism comes into play, because what is the neuron is glucose dependent. All right, it needs glucose. And glucose plays such a significant role in managing energy because it needs it fast. The brain requires a tremendous amount of energy. So by going through glycolysis, you're going to be able to meet the needs of the brain when it fires to get that the signaling, everything that needs to be done through glycolysis, through glucose. And it's glucose dependent. And it also has this secondary mechanism or process of where the astrocyte can contribute glucose as the needs or demand rise. That astrocyte can convert lactate to glucose for the neuron to meet the stressors. And so if that goes, and what is that dependent on? The neuron's dependent on insulin to bring glucose into the neuron and convert it into energy through glycolysis. So in insulin resistance, the neuron then has it becomes inefficient in not being able to provide that energy. Well, when that starts, that's when the astrocyte starts to try to make up with lactate converting to glucose, and it does a job for a while, but then that can be overwhelmed. And so when that happens, if we're not making enough energy and we're pushing this system, we're creating again this process of oxidative stress in the neuron that leads to calcium dysregulation in the neuron that then leads to apoptosis or loss of neurons or inefficiencies of the neuron not being able to work efficiently, meaning cognitive problems.
So just using glucose isn't a bad thing as long as everything's working efficiently. But when it's using just glucose and not working efficiently, that's when you can have the buildup of like the reactive oxygen or oxidative stress.
So when it's losing its ability, when the neuron is not able to like a muscle cell to take in glucose, well, then it's being stressed, right? And it doesn't have that. So it doesn't have that capability. It has mitochondria in it to use oxidative phosphorylation, to make energy, also ATP, but it's not. The neuron needs a lot of ATP and it needs it now, and that's why glycolysis is so important, because of its quick turnover to ATP and NAD, and so it can never meet those efficiencies, and there's no real the fatty acid source isn't there like this glucose source is for the brain.
So that's why ketone esters are so important.
That's why ketone esters can be a workaround endogenously or through ketogenic diets. And that's a great thing to bring up. It's how you can work around a problem of insulin resistance or inefficiency of getting glucose. Ketones can be absorbed through the blood-brain barrier and can be utilized by the mitochondria immediately without sacrificing too much energy to make ATP and NAD. It's why you can see really unique and interesting acute changes in mild cognitive problems where people they very quickly regain cognitive abilities.
Yeah.
And again, it's a timing factor when you catch that, and it's that's a whole nother podcast. But it's you brought up something very relevant and very useful for people to kind of comprehend and understand how these substrates, if you know how effective they can be, and you know when there's certain issues you can bypass, genetic issues. Because remember, when you have these oxidative stresses that occur, you're also getting membrane stability broken down, which we've talked about before. Membranes, barriers, breakdowns. Membrane stability is very important in neurons and the other the astrocytes, the microglial cells, and so forth. So
it's hard to be reductive here, but if you'll allow me to kind of go through 3 statements and then ask the precluding question. Starting in Mastermind 14 and then again today, you've really set the table with how important it is to focus on this energy crisis and how it might underpin a lot of these other things that, while they're just as important, this mitochondrial attention is something that just can't be ignored. You've discussed how this doesn't just take place overnight, that all of this stuff is intrinsic and but intrinsic to aging. How you can start to try to measure some things, like the one example I remember you giving right now was the hypertension, where it's like, hey, pay attention to this because over years this is going to be something that's going to come back a little bit later.
It's one of those triggers.
Yeah. And so my third point here being is coming back to one of the very first things you said, this Alzheimer's dementia really being a expressed phenotype. So where does this...
He was listening.
Yeah, I
isn't
listen.
that? I think that's kind of cool, though. If you think of it as a phenotype, and what influences phenotype, many different stressors, and we've indicated these energy. They're all energy dependent stressors, and so that takes me back to.
Oh boy!
If I look at this as
my question was, where are we now? So there we go. Go ahead, keep going.
Okay, we're right back at cellular medicine, and cellular medicine can truly define this process of, well, how is this created? Well, it's created by, number one, an issue that happens with the bioenergetics, what I said of how the cell is able to generate energy, distribute energy, regulate it. And then what happens with that energy as far as maintaining repair or membrane control or signaling? Well, when that goes wrong, what does that lead to? It leads to immune dysregulation. It leads to immune dysregulation. It leads to redox issues, then immune dysregulation, then vascular issues can potentially be part of that, and then proteostasis issues, and they all work in this trajectory of all having influences or being influenced by mitochondria, because that's kind of the mitochondria is the key to those energy issues, energy crisis. So it's why health is just there's
no protocol.
Yeah, and I think people are, when we look at this recognition of, hey, why is this happening? Why are we seeing more of this today than we saw maybe earlier? Well, yeah, people are living longer, and here's a perfect example where longevity doesn't equal health span. Mm-hmm. This is a perfect example of this. It's like, yeah, people are living longer, but they're losing their cognitive skills. Is that what you want? Is that longevity? No, you want health span.
Go ahead.
I wanted to go back to your question that you had started with more research and the female population, the male, and how I was I don't think that's prevalent. I actually feel like what it is I feel like that's not as prevalent just because we day to day just focus on the pathways and different ways that can lead to cognitive function, not so much who it is, just more of the pathway in science, which is the same.
Why is 2/3 of it women? Is there a
Is
reason
it
for that?
hormone reasons?
Oh, yeah, it's that complete
Men stress us.
it's that complete inappropriate misconduct of our medical groups, totally putting women 30 years behind with
Hormones.
the understanding of how important estrogen and progesterone and testosterone are in this bioenergetics issue that we talked about. I mean,
Oh, so you're saying it's an inorganic distribution? You're saying it's been caused?
hell yeah, we've ignored it. We've made huge mistakes that have cost the female population. We can't make it up. I mean, we really fucked up, and it's all, and we've proven that, and it's becoming soon enough. It'll come full circle when
It
everybody
has.
gets educated enough to understand this, and it's just coming out now.
The black box warning was removed, correct?
Yeah, well, that was for actually, it's going to be all hormonal. Hormones play a role,
Yeah.
but this also goes back to hormones go back to mitochondria. But for females in particular, it's a way you can look at it very simply. It's a disservice that's happened, and it's why over time, when women go through menopause, that's kind of as they're getting into premenopausal, menopausal places or changes. That's where you start seeing the incremental things that can start building up
Brain
over
fog.
time with this bioenergetics because of the hormonal issues that change, which we can absolutely influence today, and we were before, but we were bastardized for it, and we were told we didn't know what we were talking about. We were told we were bullied, but some of us weren't bullied because we knew the mechanisms and no one could refute it. And you talk, even these experts who wrote the paper. Okay, I should stop.
We're good.
This has been a meaty episode, and not to make it meatier, but I want to break the performance protocol into 3 questions.
Ooh, you're really challenging him today with these
No, but I think
multiple
this is
things.
I think this is important. The 3 parts of the performance protocol being like what can be monitored, what can be done, and what can be further researched. So what can be monitored? If we had a performance protocol, because you brought up the hypertension, and that one has just stuck with me. What are some of the things as people continue to age, just some key metrics to just be watching, to just be like, take care of yourself, to keep an eye on?
Well, just remember, I mean, we spent a whole episode on this on the gut. I mean, when you start having gut issues, that should be set off some alarms that can have an influence on the brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sleep disorders, if you're not sleeping well, can that influence? Absolutely. If you're not exercising, if you question yourself, will that have an influence? Absolutely.
What about stress?
Stress is a great. That's a whole nother podcast that we've touched on individually through different podcasts, where stress is this other trigger.
Mm-hmm.
It's another trigger that affects that phenotype through a way that we now can classify stress as what it does to create these damage-associated molecular patterns that are made in the cell that lead to immune activation, inflammatory changes, oxidative stress,
So
and
the
this
loss
whole
of redox
and this
and-
loss of redox and this whole process of mitochondrial inefficiencies and so forth. So it's definable. It's again, it's knowledge that we can't ignore, and it's all coming together now. And that's what's beautiful, is that people want to learn it. People want to understand it. But what's even more intimidating, I think, for the physicians is that the patients want to know now.
Number 2.
Oh,
good.
he just,
good.
That
no,
was
that's
like
that's a
Great.
perfect bridge.
You
Yeah.
just, that was a moment.
Let him finish with his
That
bridge.
was like, if I could drop this mic, I would drop it.
That's a perfect bridge. So the second part of the protocol is what can be done. So let's say patients are noticing some of these things slipping, they're having deficiencies. One of the endogenous options you just brought up was ketones.
So that's diet. So that's substrate diet related, right? Can you improve the efficiencies of cell function, the bioenergetics, let's say, energetics, energics, however you want to say it? Can you do it through what you eat? Absolutely. It's getting this flexibility back into the cell and into the mitochondria by utilizing carbohydrates and proteins and fatty acids appropriately. Well, a super food group we could look at is ketone esters, and either through a ketogenic diet, which that gets a little more complicated because ketogenic diets can be in healthy people can be a tremendous benefit for a finite period of time, because you can get into some immune issues if you do it too long, over 3 or 4 months. It's a good thing to rotate through, but this is where if you go back and look at all the data on the Mediterranean diet, it has real implications of showing how it improves these things we've discussed about metabolism and energy, and can improve or can protect people because of the fats and the right proteins and the carbohydrates and fiber. It can protect people from those triggers of changing the bioenergetics that lead to neurocognitive dysfunction. So diet, exercise, sleep.
So
I can't.
We'll do number 3, and I feel like I'm seeing a common theme.
And then we could even, then we can go. This is where we take that next level of, okay, well, gosh, then as we age, we have certain genetic predispositions that potentially can work. We haven't even gotten into that part of SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms of genes, of how that can affect. If the environment's not right, it can flip those. And can that be an indicator to push this process in the wrong direction? Yeah. And then we can get into, well, are there ways to mitigate or help these cells, with certain supplements, besides just food groups, or particular peptides or small molecules? And that's where it gets into the intricacies of really understanding cellular medicine and molecular pathways, where you can really work to the advantage of improving health span that will have an influence on this when you're trying to intervene with mild cognitive inefficiencies that are already starting.
And
So,
3.
And you may not even see them.
The third performance protocol, the third part of our performance protocol today, is, the first 2 parts being what can you watch out for, what can you maybe do about it when the things you're watching out for either aren't working or you can't watch out for them, and then what can we do about it here in the future. So this third one is kind of for the research community. If you had a blank check and you could just grant a lab something to look into, is there anything in particular you're like, this is something that I'd love to see studied? And you can be as finite and minute here as you want to be, but I'm just curious, like, where would you put
Specific
research?
to this.
Yeah, where would you put research dollars next? Like, what's your next big question?
It's not that one drug or one new molecule or even one peptide is going to make the difference. It's invest in that this team of people that are looking at all these influences together and work on them together. Like from a perspective of I would invest in a group of people from cellular medicine, like kind of controlling the thought process of, people in the microbiome area, people in the stem cell research, people in and exosomes, people in the genetics, in looking at the genome, the transcriptome, the proteome, the metabolome, and together approaching this process. That's what I'm always trying to capture when I'm lecturing. I bring all of those pieces into play for people to consider of how important that is. Nobody's doing that. No one's doing that. And if you had the money to invest in a group like that, where you've got a thought leader that pushes all of those people in one direction, watch out.
Interesting. So kind of gave me a non-answer, but I get your answer. Instead of like an interesting one thing to look into more, basically what you just said is you don't like this siloed approach to the research.
You're never going to get anywhere.
Go ahead, Maddie.
So how you went through, like, there's 5 areas that can all...
I could make it more, but yeah.
We're just going to focus on the 5 now. Yeah. Is it kind of a, like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Or is it just anything could drive it, but it all ends up at the same
Cellular
endpoint?
medicine drives all of it. And it's how we can all talk together. Because, I know some things, but there are people that in the microbiome world who have far more knowledge than I do. People in the stem cell world that have far more knowledge. But myself and others could help direct the conversation or the processes of where it's like building the atom bomb, right? I mean, bad example to use, but remember how Oppenheimer put all of these people together to solve a problem. They were all experts in different areas of...
all in the desert together, and they didn't leave till they figured it out. Yeah,
I'm not kidding. I'm using that as an example.
I get what you mean.
But that's how shit gets done. It's like
teamwork.
It's total teamwork.
Makes the dream work.
Whoa.
Have you never heard that?
No.
That's like one
Why'd
of
you
the...
have to deflate? Could have been my win for the day.
No, you get the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and he's enthused enough about that without ever having heard it. You'll get 2 of these.
And part of that too, though, right?
What?
Part of that is
everyone has to drop their egos.
Yes. Yeah, even the person like myself who may think they're in charge or something.
Whose head sometimes doesn't fit out the door.
Yeah. Gotta drop the egos, and I think it's about time to
drop mic.
This episode. Yeah.
Was that a good?
That was great.
That was
great.
That's true. That's truly what has to happen. And I'm just going to say there are these think tanks that are out there and all of this, but that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen like what I'm saying needs to happen, and it will happen. I'm telling you, it's going to happen because
patients want to know.
Yeah, and the more that cellular medicine is understood, the more that people get on this bandwagon or platform and get smarter. Holy smokes. Like I said, a lot of people out there way smarter that are going to make more sense out of this and push that process. Matt and Maddie, thank you for another episode of Redox Revolution. Until next time.